morning. It's Monday. This is the Road to Concord. I am your host, Joe Bakanovic. You are watching us on freedomnetworks.com. That is networks with an X, Networx. If you go to our homepage up on the left-hand side, you will see FNTV. Just give that a click. You'll be watching us live. That is the Twitch feed. You can also find us on Twitch under Freedom Networks. Today I am simulcast on our Facebook feeds. That'll be Freedom Networks with an X on Facebook, or Freedom with Steve Nichols. He is the owner of our network, and that is the show that immediately precedes mine on our network. Excuse me. But those are our live places. You can also find my show on Rumble. You go to Rumble, you just search in the channels up at the top where you got a little search button that says videos, and you search off to the right. Click on that little arrow where it says videos, and down underneath it, it'll say channel. Search the channel, The Road to Concord. You'll find it returns two different things. It'll return The Road to Concord is all one word. That's actually the channel. If you see The Road to Concord with spaces, those are individual shows. Please subscribe to the channel. That way, it'll tell you whenever a new show is about to come up, and you'll be able to find all the old shows from there. We would appreciate it if you would go over to Rumble and start following us. I know that we're on Freedom Networks. I got that. Got it. But just in case something ever happened and they censored Steve or Freedom Networks or anything like that, in the time it would take us to come back up, you'd still be able to find this show on Rumble. You can also find the podcasts of The Road to Concord on Podbean, Bean, and is in November. Podbean throws it to iHeart and Spotify as well. So you look Podbean, iHeart, Spotify, just search for The Road to Concord. You'll find our podcasts. It's an audio version. I upload those at the end of every show. Soon you'll be able to listen on Podbean live, kind of like a radio program. So those of you who don't want to eat up your video data and all that other good stuff, you'll be able to listen live on Podbean soon. It's kind of like Discord. You won't be able to comment, but you'll be able to hear us. You can email me, joe@theroadtoconcord.com. I have a few of your emails from over the weekend. I have not answered them yet. A couple of y'all, I just humbled me. I don't know what to say. Been trying to think on that. I will get back to you. I promise I will answer. And you can call. The number is 229-469-0335. Little quick housekeeping here. Yes. For those of you commenting on the Facebook page, it sounds like Steve Nichols, our owner of the network, is thinking about giving up on Facebook. Yes. From what I know of it, yes. He's come the 2nd of January when the new year starts. I think he's only going to be on Twitch until he finds, whatever he's happy with other places. I know that no matter what happens, if quote unquote the proverbial they come and haul Steve off, as long as I'm still standing, I'll be on Rumble. But I have permission from Steve to do that. And hopefully that's where I'll get most of us coming to watch my show at some point or another, until such time as there's a better live feed on Freedom Networks where you can chat and everything. They're working on that. He's working on it. It's a shoestring thing. He's got to get going as he goes. So you got to bear with him. Takes time when you're doing it without a massive corporate budget. He needs your support. So hopefully you'll continue to give it to him. Today is Manic Monday. I do have a series of stories to read for you today, cover. They are in your show notes. If you are on Twitch or Facebook, I have already posted the link to The Road to Concord. That is my blog, theroadtoconcord.com. That blog supports this show. I will be integrating the two of them before the end of this month a little more thoroughly. But you got a PDF I threw up there that'll go over all the stories I'm going to read and cover today. Yeah, like cattle, they herd you onto a new platform. I got it, John. I got it. I'm reading comments from the classroom. Anyhow, theroadtoconcord.com, you get today's show notes. If you are on Rumble, the link is already in the description of the show. So all you got to go down there. It says your show notes can be found here. Click the link. It'll take you right to the PDF. I make these PDFs so that you can, if you choose to do so, download these stories so you can either follow along or verify that I'm reading them correctly, or whatever you want to do. When I make the PDFs, I do have a tendency to filter out a lot of the pictures and videos. And I leave the links, though, all the hyperlinks that are in the stories, I'll leave them live in the PDF for you. So sometimes the videos and pictures add to the story. You might want to go back and check with them. Um, Sorry, annoyed and tired of people giving up. Well, John, I hope that doesn't count me giving up. I'm not going to give up. But I don't know that Steve's trying to give up as much as he's trying to get somewhere where he doesn't have to watch every single word he says. Let's see who we have on the phone this morning. Good morning, caller. You're on the road to Concord with Joe.
Good morning, Joe. It's T-Rex. How you doing?
Doing all right, T-Rex. How about yourself this morning, brother?
All right, all right. Last week, I was in a YouTube, I wouldn't call it a debate. It was an academic discussion with a bunch of academics, PhDs, and so forth. And I just wanted to tell you, I drew on a lot of the things that I have learned listening to your podcast. So I wanted to thank you, first of all, for putting on a real good program here. And it was funny, at one point, one was trying to describe something, a term he had heard, and he was describing what it was he was trying to articulate, and it just came to me from the show. He was trying to describe Occam's razor. And I typed that in the chat box, and all of a sudden, T-Rex was the hero. But, I know I happen to, this guy that runs this particular podcast is a colleague of mine, so I don't think he was totally surprised, but everybody else was taken aback. Yes, that's it. I mean, these guys are from Europe, PhDs from Europe. I never heard of them, but yeah, I just thought that was funny. That was, where did I learn that? Right here on the road from Concord.
God. You see, now that's like the fourth or fifth person this over the weekend that is, if you do what I'm doing, sometimes, T-Rex, you need a little affirmation just so that you know that you're not talking to nobody. So thank you, brother. That helps a lot, man. That does help.
I wish you had been there with me, because I'm trying to formulate an argument again. The topic of all things was creationism versus evolution.
Oh, dude, they would not have liked me.
I know. I would have loved to have had you there, but they're not combative. I mean, these are very introspective. They're contemplating all aspects. But a term came up, and I wanted to ask you if you've ever heard of this term, because I had, prior to this podcast, I'd never heard it. And I'm a medical librarian. I was a lab technician, a histotechnician. I've worked in science. Endogenous retrovirus. Have you ever heard of that? Endogenous retrovirus. They call them ERVs.
Yeah, I have heard of it, but man, I'd have to go back and look that one up again. But the word is familiar.
Well, what their argument is that these ERVs are prominent in many vertebrae, and the evolutionists have seized on this. And because these EOGs, they say, can be traced genetically throughout the genome of mammals and even into reptiles, that is a scientific proof of evolution, that man ascended from or descended from reptiles.
Boy, they need to study their philosophy a little bit better. That doesn't work. That's not a proof.
I'd like the next one of these that comes around, if you could get free, I'd like to bring you on.
Well,
on this forum.
I'll have to make sure I send you a private message through Facebook so you know how to get a hold of me, T-Rex, directly.
Okay. I could have used you, because first thing in my mind, the first thing I'm chipping away at, I kind of got a unique background here in lower level scientific methodology, working in a lab, but I have higher level, doctoral level data collecting skills, where I was trained. I was in a doctoral program at one point. Of course, I have my master's degree, finished a master's thesis. So I combine those two things. And I want to know, first of all, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. I see in courtrooms that they're showing on these genetic testing, where they have this quote unquote proof that this blood was genetically. Now, I go along, but I believe in blood typing. Blood typing works. And I'm not saying I don't believe in genetic testing. All I'm saying is I don't understand the methodology, or what grounds them, what they use to validate these findings in a genetic test. Because in medical technology, we have the patient to ground our to validate our findings.
Yes.
You have a high glucose, you got a sick patient. You got a patient, you got a specimen with a low hemoglobin, you've got a patient that's suffering symptoms. You can always correlate the symptoms, the patient, and the test the test value. And I don't see that kind of validation with genetic testing that I'm aware of.
Yeah, that's because they're doing the same thing with genetic testing that they do with fingerprints. The short version of this one, T Rex, is that like with a fingerprint, they'll mark X number of points on your fingerprint and say, well, okay, that's unique to you and only you. The problem is it's not your whole fingerprint. Those are just the points on your fingerprint that they've marked. You might have somebody out there with identical points that has a different fingerprint than you do. But because they'll take an 11-point match. Sometimes you'll hear this in TV, a so many point match. That's what they're actually getting down to. Well, the same thing's being done in genetic markers. They're saying there's so many familial points in this genetic sample that match this guy or that guy, but all they're looking at is specific gene sequences in those particular areas. They're not looking at the entire genetic footprint, and they won't do that because that's expensive to do and it takes a lot of time. And like you said, I have to have that person to match the sample to that person 100%. So what they're playing is probabilities. Now, I don't necessarily have a problem with that when we understand what probabilities mean. All science, good science, sound science, like what you try to do, T-Rex, all science is based in probability of an outcome. Science has never proven a single thing. It cannot. All it can do is give us a probability of something. So in courtrooms, when they're saying this genetic test, has such and such probability to match that person, that's what they're actually doing. And a lot of times they'll filter out that when they show us a courtroom or something, they'll filter out where the witness has probability or likelihood. And sometimes they don't filter it out, but we don't understand what we're hearing. We don't pay attention to that. What they're actually telling us is a 1 in 7 billion chance that there's somebody else out there with the same fingerprint or the same genetic sequence. Well, in a real world, that usually is proof beyond doubt. But that's not proof the way our society wants it nowadays, where 100% there's no room for doubt whatsoever. But that's what's going on, is they're just giving you a likelihood based on the places that they sampled that genetic sample, just the little sections of the genome, the DNA string that they sampled. Hopefully that helps.
I'd still like to know a little bit more about the technology.
Oh, yeah.
Because what they're showing in courtrooms, it looks to me like it's something that what I remember in basic biology class was a chromatography.
Yes.
And
if they've used, what's that, NPC or whatever, where they take a little bit of sample and they reproduce it, if they're using that, their results should be thrown out the window, according to the guy who invented the technology. But that's another rabbit to chase right there, brother.
Well, it was an interesting conversation, but anyway, a lot what I hear on this show came in handy.
Before you leave,
I wish you'd have been there.
I would have too, because before you leave, all that virus in the different vertebrae and in amphibians and reptilians, all that proves is that virus found a way to inhabit those species long ago. It doesn't prove evolution. It just proves that's all it proves.
That's what I was thinking too. I didn't see where they were going.
What they're saying is the common cold proves evolution. Really? No, the common cold proves that it can invade those bodies.
Well, they were also, I'll tell you, they had one interesting argument that I liked. I'll get off here after this, let you comment on this too. They're emphasizing that the theory of evolution, as they're describing, they're not trying to describe the genesis of life on this planet. They're saying that Darwinian evolution is just about adaptability of species, which is how I understood the Darwin writings that I've read from his.
Yeah, but Darwin thought that all species had a common ancestor. And if you really dig into the scientists, good, credible scientists who have discussed this, we have not had enough time. Life has not existed on this planet, according to the best of our knowledge, long enough for us to have evolved to the point where we're at right now. Plus, evolution goes counter to everything else in this universe. It's from disorganization upward to organization, where everything else in this world goes from organization down to disorganization. Laws of entropy. Evolution goes against the laws of entropy.
Yeah, and I think you're right there. I mean, there's other species on this planet that had several 100 million years ahead of, if we believe the fossil record, and if you believe in that timeline,
right?
That if you believe in evolution, you believe there's other reptiles were around much longer than us. How did one mammalian Homo sapiens species jump to where we've jumped. You're right. It's inconsistent with all other life on this planet.
Well, so's the dating system we use. Carbon-14
Yeah.
dating cannot be used, according to the guy who invented carbon-14 dating, because he found his mistake in
I
later
wanted to
years.
call in last week when you were talking about time. That really had me. Man, I had some good questions, and your herpetologist had to call in and kind of derailed everything
I'm
about the time I
sorry.
landed at work. And
I'm sorry about that, brother.
that's all right, brother. But maybe we'll get back on that topic again. I've taken up enough of your time, but
Oh, it'll
thank
come back
you,
up, I
and
promise.
I'm listening.
I appreciate it. You have a good day, man.
Yes, sir.
Stay safe. All right. It is time for us to get to our headlines. I love it when y'all call in, and I also love hearing your stories about how things we've learned here have helped. I keep telling every one of you, and I mean it, you can do this. You don't need to be no pointy-headed PhD. Each and every one of us can do all of this. You just got to train yourself. You got to know what it is you don't know and learn how to use it. Because there's another one of you that told me just this weekend that some of the things you've been learning here came in handy in your daily life. And people who, in this case, this individual listener, in his case, people close to him who had always kind of dismissed him as being a nobody, all of a sudden have an entirely different respect for him because of the simple things that I've helped him study and learn here, just about fallacies. Now, all of a sudden, he's taken more seriously by that person close to him. So it helps, man. It all helps. And like I said, these pointy heads with all their little letters after their name, that's just self-appointed. They're no better than you are. In a lot of cases, you are better than they are. Real quick before we get into the lesson, how does it run counter to the laws of entropy? Crystal formation, according to that logic, runs counter to the laws of entropy. No, crystal formation's following the laws of physics. Those particular molecules will naturally align that way because of the way those molecules fit with each other, because of the like the Legos at the molecular level. If you've William, if you've James, if you've done some look into chemistry, they'll show you how different molecules naturally have to click into each other when they collect. That's what crystalline formation's doing. But there's nothing about RNA and DNA that says those particular proteins have to connect to each other that way. And what you're getting there is it's crystalline formations don't add information. That's what it comes down to. There's no addition of information there. All the information in the crystal is found in the individual molecule that makes up that crystal. Higher order life forms like humans, that adds information from an amoeba. That as you evolve that way, you're adding information from nothing. That goes against the laws of entropy. So that's what we're talking about right there. Okay, we got to get into the show. We got a lot to cover today. So if you'll please forgive me, here we go. First story in your homework, in your study guide that I put out for you, it's called The Mystification of America. I don't have the author's name or the date of this one for you. It's recent. It's from her blog. I will let you go there if you're interested. Her bio is in the upper top. You just click on the information link up in the upper left-hand corner of her blog page, and she'll show you who she is. She's got her picture up. She's got her name. She gives her biography. She's humble. She doesn't need her name on everything she writes, but she's got a very good background. You might find it interesting, but she writes The Mystification of America. One consequence of the last 2 bizarre years of insane policy and inexplicable action by the Democrats, who have run our country into the ground, is the utter mystification of America. We just don't get it. It makes no sense. Deep down, we understand that nobody, not even a dementia patient, is this mullishly stupid. We were energy independent, so they destroyed American energy. We were disengaged from the Middle Eastern oil barons who simultaneously despise and manipulate us, so they went begging oil from Saudi Arabia. We had peace in the Middle East, so they labeled the crown prince who headlined the agreement a pariah and refused to take his calls to take calls from Israel. So in other words, they're causing trouble, meaning the Democrats. She said we had the communist thugs in Venezuela and fascist thugs in Iran isolated and under regime crushing pressure. So they unilaterally relaxed sanctions on both, they being the Democrats. We had China boxed away from the commercial espionage, so they reversed the policies that prevented it. We had the military restocked and strong, so they sent our weapons wholesale to Ukraine. We had military recruitment and standards high, So they kicked out thousands of unvaxxed soldiers, punished them for not self-flagellating over imaginary racism and homophobia, destroyed aptitude and fitness standards, and trashed recruitment, now missing goals by 25% or more. And then they're also, of the people that they are recruiting, they've greatly reduced. You can get in with a criminal degree, criminal background now, and all sorts of other stuff. We had a strong economy under 2% inflation, so they spent 5 trillion imaginary dollars on green boondoggles and sent us into stagflation spiral not seen since Jimmy Carter. We had the lowest household debt and highest home ownership in decades, so they straddled us with massive inflation, soaring interest rates, raising family debt to unsustainable levels, and crashing the housing market. We had Afghanistan corralled and scheduled for a steady withdrawal, so they abruptly pulled out, betraying the Afghans who helped us, got 13 soldiers killed, and lost billions in American weapons, thus making the Taliban the most heavily armed force in the region. We had Mexico cooperating on the border and were building a wall, so they stopped the wall, told Mexico to stop helping, and let millions of unvetted illegals from 106 countries pour over the border. We had science that told us COVID vaccines were ineffective, masking harmful, and lockdowns useless, so they locked us down, mandated jabs, became mask Nazis, destroyed businesses, and ruined the educational, social, and immunological development of an entire generation of children. We had a booming, efficient economic shipping system that gave us the highest standard of living on the planet. So they created a diesel crisis, ruined the supply chain, regulated shipping into catastrophe. We had the cleanest elections on the planet and relied on the perception and reality of those clean elections. So they removed the voting safeguards in place for 200 years and replaced them with reams of farmed mail ballots that undermined all confidence and instilled hopelessness among the electorate, an act that turned the last hope of corrective midterm into, at best, a draw and a temporary hedge against the completing of the destruction. We had the healthiest, broadest access to food from around the world, with grocery stores that were international tourist attractions, so they inflated food prices by 20% and climbing, emptied shelves, and compensated by telling us quite literally to eat insects. Nobody is this stupid. Nobody does this by accident. You have to try very hard to destroy so much so quickly because you can't reinvent and fundamentally transform a healthy, happy country. You can only transform something that is first undone. You can only defeat a free people after they are rendered disheartened and hopeless. Stop looking at each aberrant act. Look at it all. Now, do you see? Is what she asks. I have a note at the bottom of um, her post, her article, and I write, what this author just described is strong, albeit indirect evidence that Carol Quigley was correct. They have built a global system of interconnected dependency, which is then used to control all nations of the world. Trump is hated by both parties because he proved their way is a disaster, then showed us there is a better way. They cannot allow this as it exposes everything I and so many like me have been trying to explain for decades. It strips them bare of their camouflage by red pilling all who are willing to pay attention. That article right here also hits on something else, although she doesn't point it out. If you want to destroy it, remake it, you have to destroy it first. That's nihilism. Remember, folks, I've explained this. Scripturally, spiritually, if you want to declare yourself a god, you just make order from chaos. Well, if you don't have chaos, you have to create it first. So spiritually, that's what's going on. On a material way, you can only defeat a free people after they've been rendered disheartened and hopeless. We've read the founders' quotes that tell us that's exactly what has to happen first. You have to destroy what is before you can remake. So she points this out. Then we have another one. This is from Harbinger's Daily. This one, the one I just read, the mystification, that's a blog. That's a personal blog from an attorney. This one, Harbinger's Daily, is from a Christian newspaper. If you'll notice, folks, I draw your stories from all over the place. So this one from Harbinger's Daily says, we live in a generation that has turned from solid, unchangeable truth, capital T truth, to a quicksand of lies. It's by Hal Lindsey, December 5th, 2022. It says, anytime we approach the end of particularly tumultuous year, or at any time, okay, we look forward to the next year as a return to normal. But at this point, the old normal no longer exists. 2023 looks like a continuation of the last few years, only worse. I want to stop here in that article for a moment. This is true. Now, if you listened on Steve's show way back when 2020, when the COVID thing started, or if you were following my blog page, and you can still find this on the road to concord.com, you'll find it if you look for it. I was telling everybody, you're not going back to normal. And I said that at the time they locked us down and started forcing the jabs and the masks. I told everybody, get used to this. This is your new normal. You're not going back. How many of you still see people running around with masks on their face? You didn't wear masks to stop you from getting flu or the common cold, but you wear it now to stop you from getting COVID, which is essentially at this point the flu and the common cold. Oh my God, Joe, you make it so flippant of the. No, I'm telling you the truth, the capital T truth. And yet we're still holding to something that was not necessary and was forced on you specifically for this reason, to move the Overton window, what you think of as normal, farther and farther to the left so that you are easier and easier to control. That's what this is all about. Don't doubt it. Study it. You'll see it. So this article continues. Sin delude. Remember, this is a Christian newspaper. Sin deluges our society in countless ways. Consider this one. We live in a generation that has abandoned truth. The word now depicts an emotion. It's about how I feel about things rather than what is really so. Jesus spoke of truth as a foundation, something dependable that you can safely build on. But the people of our time portray truth as malleable. They speak of your truth and my truth as different things. But real truth, what we here on this show call capital T truth, does not change from person to person. Our understandings may be different, but truth is truth, whether we understand it or not. People who devalue truth make themselves vulnerable to things like fake news, fraud, duplicity, hypocrisy, treachery, manipulation, cunning, guile, and just plain lying. Jesus prophesied that the last days would be a time of deception, and here we are. It says Romans 1:25 speaks of people who exchange the truth of God for a lie. They turn from solid, unchangeable truth to quicksand of lies. Verse 28 says God gives such people over to a depraved mind. For years, I have said that a depraved mind means to portray they are unlikely to think in their own best interests. Stick with this. The rest of the stories today, will detail the depraved mind that he's talking about, which is why I chose this story. We saw an amazing example of this, on December 1st, when the Atlantic, the magazine, ran an article headlined, "The People Cheering for Humanity's End. A disparate group of thinkers say we should welcome our demise." This is a serious article. They think that humanity ought to do itself away, except for the people who wrote the article. They need to, for some weird reason, they need to survive. They want everybody else dead, except for them. It's amazing how that works. Such people are not talking about the second coming or judgment day when God will complete his program of redemption. They are talking about a sad, empty ending to everything human that ever occurred. They long for an end to great thoughts, beautiful music, laughter, and smiles. They do not resonate with joy at the sound of children playing. They hope it all ends, and the sooner, the better. What's going to follow in our show notes today is it's going to illustrate that we live in this society that Mr. LaHaye was talking about. Let's see what we have here. We have some comments in the classroom for just a second. Let me look. Right. We, the people, are already letting them control us. Yep. You got that. I don't know if it's a bad thing to have a drive around to find fresh ingredients. Busting. I don't know. Got it. All right. Nothing going on there. I think that really needs to be addressed at the moment. We will continue. Our third story from MRC TV. Beyond parody. Pay attention. We covered this last week. German doctors are requiring euthanasia patients to be fully vaxxed first. Okay, they're going to kill you, but you have to be fully vaxxed before they'll kill you. You want to know what fornicating for chastity means? There you go. I'm going to kill you, but you have to be fully vaccinated against dying from COVID before I kill you. This is by Brittany M. Hughes. It's December 5th, 2022. It says, it's totally okay to hire a doctor to help you off yourself over in Germany. Just make sure you're vaxxed first. Oh, Joe, this is about Germany. Uh-huh. And the people in this country who are now seized control over it, I've always told you, we got to do it the way the Europeans do it, the way Canada is now doing it. Give them time. They test all this stuff overseas before they bring it here. Yeah, they do. The story continues. In a move that really makes us go, huh? German doctors are now turning away euthanasia requests who aren't up to date on their COVID vaccines, because apparently, if you want to kill yourself, you must first make sure you're jabbed against a virus that can, well, kill you. Sounds a little counterproductive, but okay. As European countries battle to limit the spread of the virus, Verein-Sterbehelfe, the German Euthanasia Association, has issued a new directive declaring it will now only help those who have been vaccinated or recovered from the disease, the Spectator explains. Are we back? I did nothing, folks. We got booted again. I do not understand how or why this happens. We've looked. This is not on our end. This does not seem to happen to Steve. We were told this has to be on our end with the program we're using. We've looked. There was no reason for that to have happened just now. I apologize. But hopefully we're back. The joys of technology and censorship. All right, it says there's a related story. It says disturbing video allegedly shows Chinese people waiting in line to get into concentration camps. Don't dismiss that. Let's see who's on our phone. Good morning, caller. You're on the road to Concord with Joe.
Hey, Joe, it's Sharky.
Hey, Sharky. What's up, brother?
Oh, my buddy. I'm loving the show. I got a quick, funny story and a question for you.
All right, go for it.
Well, my in-laws are in town, and we were driving out to a steakhouse last night, and the rental car that they had with that feature that if you start to get out of the line, it goes beep, 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 you know, when you're driving.
Yeah.
And every time that he veered off the road and it started to beep, I would quote one of my favorite movie lines, and I would say, John Sparta, you have been fined 5 credits for veering off the road. $5 has been deducted from your bank account. And I did this about 7 times, and he's like, why do you keep doing that? And I'm like, oh, it's just from a movie. And but then I really started to think. So I had a question. With digital currency, how fast do you see digital currency becoming a real thing where we have to do it?
They've already started it with the bank system itself. Biden just did that by decree. It'll start the first of the year. Once the banks are used to using it, what they will do is they'll create a crisis, and they'll give you the solution, which will require them to shut down all the banks. They'll convert you over to your digital currency, and overnight you'll have a digital currency, and it'll be integrated with your social credit score. And if you're not a good enough citizen, you will not be allowed to buy or sell. And they have said this. It's in their literature. That's how they're going to do it. You just got to know where to look, Sharky. And once that happens, you literally will not be able to buy or sell without the beast's permission. Wow. I've read that somewhere.
So you're thinking that much like January 6th, they'll fabricate and provoke an online version of January 6th.
It won't even be online. This will be something that crashes the economy. We got to do a show on this. Let me see if I can't put that together. This needs to be addressed soon. But this is going to be planned. And when they do this, you might have $10,000 in the bank. You'll go into this crisis. You come back out on the other end. You'll have $2,500 worth of their new currency, whatever it is. They're going to just take a bunch of money. They've created the mess right now, Sharky, with hyperinflation and your money not being worth anything. They've created that mess. They did that. It started out through bumbling and their own stupidity. And now they're actually taking advantage of that and using it. There's Cloward and Piven. You remember that show? This is Cloward and Piven. We're going to crash the economy on purpose so that they need that crisis so that they can turn around and give you a new solution, the whole time hiding the fact that they're the reason for the problems. And this is why they had to get rid of Trump. because Trump lays them bare. Trump shows the world that they have no clothes. So they have to get rid of the likes of Trump, because what he did as president, with as much attack as he was under, false attack that we know by now, with all that attack in his presidency, he still managed to correct a lot of their boo-boos in 4 short years. Imagine what would have happened if the man had not been under attack and had been given 8 years to help fix the boo-boos in this country.
Wow. Okay, so a follow-up question would be, let's say that they pull the trigger on digital currency to where it's just here. It's just a thing where you just pay everything electronically now. Your bank is auto-linked to everything. Now, let's say that now we're talking law, the rule of law. How would they package, or how would they push through something to where you said something online they didn't like, and they literally fine you and they take it right out of your bank? Can they legally find ways to do that?
Dude, all they got to do is give themselves permission according to the bureaucracy. Everything in your world that is called a regulation that comes from the bureaucracies, it's not law. Constitutionally, it's not law. But yet they fine you, they ticket you, they put people in jail based on things that are not law. The bureaucracies just make a regulation and they treat it like it's a law. According to the Constitution, the only law that they can prosecute you for has to come from the Congress. And yet that's not the way they act anymore. The president just makes decrees. Executive directives, presidential orders, those are illegal. If they're treated as having the weight of law, that's illegal. That man or woman, whoever signs those, should immediately be drummed out of office if we lived under the rule of law. What you just hit on is the thing I've been telling people for years. You don't live under the rule of law. You haven't for a long time. Constitution's dead. Been dead. This is normalcy bias, where we don't want to accept the truth. This nation refuses to turn around and face the fact that there's a monster standing over its shoulder. We'd prefer to stand there in our underwear and just close our eyes and tell ourselves that if we keep our eyes closed and don't move, the monster's going to let us go. Progressives won't do that. They'll just gobble you up.
Well, and I would love to, I would love to hear a show on that in the future, because the only thing that, well, not the only thing, but one of the big things that I see a problem with is once they have that construct of, if you do something we don't like, we'll fine you or punish you in some way socially, online or through your bank. The only problem is that they can't agree with each other. They turn on themselves and eat each other. And so it's just absolute chaos.
Nihilism, as in the days of Noah. I know you get it. It's funny how all of this was predicted 2,500, 3,000 years ago, and everybody wants to just call that a myth or myth book. But yet here it is, right in front of them, exactly the way they were told it was going to be. Now you know why I have to look at everything through that lens, because it's the only thing that makes it all make sense. Perfect sense.
Well, and in the spirit of that movie I was quoting, be well, Joe Bacanova.
Demolition Man. Speaking about nihilism. Hot dogs. Armor hot dogs. All right, guys. We'll talk to you later, Sharky.
See you, buddy.
Thanks for the call. He's talking about the movie Demolition Man. Which is now almost prophetic. Remember, folks, it's not art, life imitating art. It's just art predicting the future that they're going to throw on you. So we were reading the story. I'm going to get right back to where we were at, reading a story about how now if you want to kill yourself in Germany, doctors will help you, if and only if you have been vaccinated against COVID. Because heaven forbid that you die from COVID before they have a chance to kill you. Jeez. All right. What's about to come next? This ain't pretty. Hold on to yourself, folks. From Blaze Media, Joseph McKinnon, December 2nd, 2022. Planned Parenthood director is a kid porn literacy advocate who claims children are sexual beings from birth and an abortion organization is on board. Okay. I'm going to read this one as best I can. It's a little lengthy. We've got to read this. We have to know what's going on. It says Planned Parenthood is not just the second largest provider of sterilizing hormones to transsexuals and responsible for killing over 8.6 million babies in its nationwide network of abattoirs since 1970. It also touts itself as the nation's largest provider of sex education, with a center that publishes sexuality education materials used throughout the world. A recent Fox News digital report unearthed unseemly comments made by the head of the center, William Taverner, executive director of Planned Parenthood's New Jersey based Center for Sex Education, CSE, has advocated for so called porn literacy for kids and claimed that children are born sexualized babies. In 2015, Taverner said that we have in our society an assumption of asexuality of people with intellectual disabilities. It's a myth that's perpetuated, and really, we are all sexual beings from birth until death. This radical notion advanced by Taverner, now that disabled people might be sexual, but that infants could be, that disabled people might be sexual, but that infants could be, was reiterated in a Planned Parenthood guide entitled Fundamentals of Teaching Sexuality. All right, I'm sorry. I goofed that up because I've got to get to this point. What he's saying is he and people like him want it to be legal so that they can diddle people who are mentally disabled. So who can't physically or stop you or mentally object to what you're doing to them. And he wants to be able to do this with infants as well. If you doubt me, keep listening. This is important. This is happening in your society now. You better be aware of it. Face the monster. Get ready to deal with it, because this is coming. It is at your doorstep now. The story continues. Extra to alleging that gender identity is independent from the body parts a person may have, the guide claims that sexuality is part of life through all ages and stages. In other words, sexuality's got nothing to do with your sex organs. That's what this man says. Accordingly, babies, elders, and everyone in between can experience sexuality, dispensing with the notion that sexuality is best left to consenting adults. This man just said everybody should be allowed to do whatever they want to do with each other, even if you can't give consent. That's what he said. Despite the claim that toddlers can experience sexuality, the Planned Parenthood guide states as a fact that comprehensive sex education does not lead to early sexual debut. That is a known lie. Sex education in this country has done exactly what the opponents, back when it was started, said it would do. It has been linked to promiscuity and unwanted childbirth. The sociologist in me knows this. I'm not going to go over the details for that today. We will do so in the future. What this guy just said was a lie. That is a lie. And there are others that I have pulled out for you to demonstrate to you today that are more important. But sex education, especially the way they're pushing it, not only is this a lie, they know it's a lie. Stick with me over the next few articles. I'll show you. Planned Parenthood claimed that inundating kids with sex propaganda does not prompt them to engage in sexual behavior. It's based on a publication by Advocates for Youth, an activist group funded by Susan Thompson Buffett from the Buffett Foundation and William and Floral Hewlett Foundation. The group got in trouble in 2018 for promoting mutual masturbation to grade school kids. According to Influence Watch, the group also suggested that parents are biased concerning the kind of sexual information they give to their own children. In other words, it's your fault, parents. You need to let these people run your children's lives. Says Taverner claimed in 2012 that children should be taught pornography and sex education and intimated that erotica may be useful. In other words, we should be showing pornography in high school as part of sex ed. Yes, that's what he said. He means it. Fox News Digital indicated that CSE, remember that's that organization that this guy's part of, executive director has maintained this position until at least February 2021. He's had this idea for a long time. Taverner stated, I think that there's the yearning for information that young people have that hasn't changed. The delivery of how we get information is quite different. I think that the internet is a major influence on how people learn about sexuality. There's access to erotica pornography. That was very different from young people 30 years ago. It's certainly not as accessible, certainly not as instantaneous. So there's a lot of information that is useful. While noting that some of it is wrong, Tavern said, there's good stuff out there as well. Let me stop here for a minute. We are going to have a Teaching Tuesday on this subject right here. But before we continue reading with this article, the sociologist in me pays attention to this. Remember, I have that degree, sociology degree. I'm a scientist in this. Got my little letters and everything after my name. But I keep up with these articles. There was one of them recently about how younger women, their 20s, prefer to date 50 and even older year-old men in their 50s. They like it better. And when they were asked why, every one of them said it was because those older men treat them very different from what they've been taught to expect in pornography. They've watched pornography and they have been grown up thinking that's what sexual relations are supposed to be between a man and a woman. And then they start dating these 50-year-old men who grew up before that was so prolific in society. And they say, hey, wait a minute. These older guys treat me entirely different. It's a whole different thing. There's emotional connection in it. There's meaning. And they will tell you in those surveys they are not going back to younger men. When you've got 50-year-old men starting to take up and gobble up the 20-year-old women who are actually interested in having families, your society's over. We'll cover that in more detail on a Teaching Tuesday really soon. But that's directly connected to what we're dealing with here. This guy telling you that this pornography he wants to push on your kids in school doesn't have a detrimental effect, he's full of crap and he knows it. Said the C word. In a 2021 interview, Taverner indicated that pornography was not the intended primary source of sex education, but that learning about pornography was useful to children just as much as learning to use a condom. Instruction needs to adapt to modern times. There's a resistance to, if we talk about porn, some think it is going to make people want to watch it, which is the same faulty kind of premise as we teach about condoms. It's going to make people want to have sex with condoms, or maybe that it's not a bad thing, said Taverner. Teachers shouldn't morally qualify pornography either, suggested the Planned Parenthood director. Instead, we need to present opportunities for young people to think about, for example, their values. Let's do an opinion activity. Let's do the ethics of porn. And that's not to say that there's a right answer. Other sex education answers are decided at CSE and pushed into your schools, which produces materials that address all ages, providing sexuality educators with user-friendly, cost-effective lesson plans addressing puberty, health and healthy and unhealthy relationships, contraception, sexual activity, and much more. It says, according to Klein, the organization's comprehensive sexuality education is all about grooming children. This is correct. Maureen Klein, former Planned Parenthood sex educator, volunteer, told EWTN last year that Planned Parenthood's sex propaganda is aimed at pushing sexuality and sexualizing children. They're all pushing. Hold on just a second, folks. Excuse me. What this guy with Planned Parenthood's doing is he's pushing the normalization of pedophilia. I've got the articles. We're going to cover that here. But we got to finish with this one first. Pornography to teach our children. Hang in there. So this lady's warning us. She used to be involved in this and she had to leave it. She says comprehensive sexual education is all about grooming children, using it as a marketing tool to lead to abortion. So it's a win-win for them. They get to normalize pedophilia and they get more money from abortions. Well, if it's helping them push abortions, then it goes against everything he just said. They know that it's going to cause more sex amongst teenagers, which is going to lead to more unwanted babies. So this is what the article earlier said. This is depravity, folks. This is just unhinged evil. The Federalist reported that the Planned Parenthood has also had a hand in Queer Center and pro-abortion curriculum called Reducing the Risk, which has been deployed across 16 states. One of the activities reportedly involve having young students watch cartoon pornography. All right, way back time. Newsweek, February 5th, 2016. Remember that time Bill Clinton fired his Surgeon General for encouraging masturbation education? And then there's an article about this. I'm not going to read this whole one. It's short. I could read it. I'm not going to because we're running out of time. But before we go to the break, this story is about Jocelyn Elders. And she got fired because she wanted to teach condom use and masturbation to kindergartners. And if you read that story, It's actually, where did that story come from? Newsweek. It's about a documentary in which Joycelyn Elders is part of the documentary. And she doubles down saying that if you're against her teaching masturbation and the use of condoms to kindergartners, you're the problem. She says you're the problem because you're getting in the way of them protecting people from all of this. She was fired for that back in the 1990s. And yet, we just read a story that shows you it hasn't gone anywhere. They're still pushing these ideas. Progressives never give up. Ever. They get a little idea in their pointy little heads and they are going to stick with it. And you're going to have it shoved down your throat sideways, whether you like it or not. Period. End of story. All right. When we come back, remember, the head of this CSE, Planned Parenthood organization guy, says that pornography does not cause any harm. None. And it's not going to force people to children to want to watch more pornography or to go get promiscuous. Yeah, get the popcorn. When we come back from the break, I'm going to show you something that this guy knew, and I know he knew it, before he ran his mouth. So we're going to go to the break now. When we come back, we'll discuss this. So I'm in an honorary mood, so here you go. Break's a little early. And we're back. Y'all in your seats? Because we got to get going. It's time to hit the afterburner. So, Mr. Planned Parenthood, who wants to push pornography into your children's laps all the way down to the age of kindergarten, says pornography is harmless. It's not going to cause any harm to your kid, but it could help them. From Medical Daily, pornography shrinks brain areas associated with motivation, Does X-rated media make you lazy? May 29th, 2014. Matthew Mintka. Yeah, Mr. Planned Parenthood knows about this. A new German study shows that men who view too much pornography may become lazier. Greater use of pornography by men in the study was associated with decreased volume of the brain matter in areas related to reward and motivation, say researchers at the Max Planck Institute for Human Development in Berlin. We found a significant negative association between reported pornography hours per week and gray matter volume in the right caudate, as well as within functional activity during a sexual cue reactivity paradigm in left, blah, 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 blah. In other words, functionality, connectivity of the right caudate to the left dorsalite, and all this other fancy stuff. In other words, you became lazier the more porn you watched. Hold on, there's another story that'll explain why. The study is the first to provide strong evidence from Medical Daily, a medical page. I get these things from the right place when I bring them to you for a reason, folks. I want you to understand I'm not as kookville as a lot of people like you to believe I am. There's a reason I believe what I do. I'm just sharing it with you. Do with it what you want to do with it. Says strong evidence that pornography might harm the brain in some ways, says a study, learned Simone Kuhn. She and her colleagues recruited 64 healthy German men between the ages of 21 and 45 years old, inquiring about their consumption of pornography. They then studied the participants' brains with functional magnetic resonance imaging, MRIs, watched to see how the brain reacted to pornography. We found that the volume of the so-called striatum, a brain region that has been associated with reward processing and motivated behavior, was smaller the more pornography consumption the participants reported. Moreover, we found that another brain region that is also part of the striatum that is active when people see sexual stimuli shows less activation the more pornography participants consume. In essence, the connectivity between brain striatum and prefrontal cortex worsens with the increased consumption of pornography, suggesting poor impaired decision-making capabilities. Remember, pornography for your children is a useful thing. It's not going to hurt them at all. Okay, from intellectual takeout, a pointy-headed wonk page, a think tank page. Harvard Scientists explains what porn does to your brain by John Miltimore. And just the section I want to pull out here, I've highlighted them in your show notes. Scientists have discovered that if you place a male rat in a cage with a receptive female, they will mate. But once done, the male rat will not mate more times, even if the female is still receptive. He loses all sexual interest. But if, right after he finishes with the first female, you put in a second receptive female, he will immediately mate again, and again with a third, and so on until he nearly dies. This effect has been found in every animal studied. This is called the Coolidge effect. It applies to human beings as well. Why is this important? Well, let's jump down to the next section I highlighted for you. Dopamine is the drug of desire. When you see something desirable, your brain pours out dopamine saying, go for it, do whatever it takes. Dopamine fixes your attention on that desirable object, giving you your power of concentration. So when someone clicks and sees a new pornographic image, his lower brain thinks this is a real thing. This is the lady he must win over with all his might. And so he gets an enormous dopamine flood in his upper brain, causing a wild amount of electrical energy. This first exposure to a new female who is as a potential mate wasn't something that happened to a lot of our ancestors, maybe only once in their lives, so the brain thinks this is a big deal. It doesn't know that now the game has completely changed. It doesn't understand that these are virtual females only, so with each new one, it causes another flood of dopamine, time after time, click after click, as long as he continues. It's a dopamine binge. So much for Mr. CSF saying that it's not addictive. This is why pornography causes a vicious cycle. When someone views pornography, he gets overstimulated by dopamine, so his brain destroys some dopamine receptors. This makes him feel depleted, so he goes back to pornography, but having fewer dopamine receptors, this time it requires more to get the same dopamine thrill. But this causes his brain to destroy more receptors, so he feels an even greater need for pornography to stimulate him. So as guys keep gaming the dopamine system, they start to find that they have to use pornography for longer and longer periods to have the same effect, and they have to visit more and more sites. You have to stimulate another emotion, fear or disgust, or shock or surprise. For porn use, you need to start moving to kinkier things, things that make you afraid or make you feel a bit sick. And so you start experimenting with various perversions. Pornography, devil's playground, messes with your brain. It's an addiction that affects your ability to make clear headed decisions. And we've got a question from the classroom. Let me get the mouse to behave here. John Ford says, Joe, why are you covering this? John, if you don't understand why I'm covering this, I can't explain it to you. You won't understand. We need to keep going. We're not done. So much for pornography. The next article, The Epic Times. This is by Darlene McCormick Sanchez, December 3rd, 2022. General public unaware of push to normalize pedophilia in culture and academia, from a counselor. It says Colorado mom Lydia Lerma feels punched when she hears the trendy new term minor attracted person. Just thinking of the damage a pedophile inflicted upon her son, who was 6 at the time, causes pain. Creating a polite sounding term for someone sexually attracted to children enrages her. Any push to normalize pedophilia or designate it as another sexual orientation to be tolerated is unconscionable, she says, told Epic Times. That's a bunch of expletives, she said, of the academics pushing acceptance of pedophilia. They are going to face the greatest resistance they have ever seen. Society is not going to let that happen. I'm going to stop. She's wrong. Society will not only let it happen, society will embrace it, champion it, and defend it. How do I know? This right here, this book, After the Ball. I tell you that if you know where to find it, progressives will give you the blueprint for what they're doing. This book, let's see, when was it written? This book is telling you how to normalize homosexuality. And it's by Marshall Kirk and Hunter Madsen, PhDs. And it was published in 1989. But it's about things that happened long before that. This book tells you how to normalize, how to make homosexuality normal and put it into society legally. Pedophiles are using the same playbook, the exact same formula from this book. There's only one reason for that. They want it normalized. We accepted it when they did it with homosexuality. We're going to accept it when they do it with pedophilia. Learn it, love it, live it. It's just the way we're going to go. So back to the story. But in academic circles, some have begun to argue that pedophilia should be considered just another sexual orientation, not a mental disorder. And a therapist who treats pedophilia told the Epoch Times that he believes pedophilia is on the way to becoming normalized. In 2018, medical student Mirjam Heine, who said she had a background in psychology, gave a presentation called Pedophilia is a Natural Sexual Orientation during a TEDx event at the University of Würzburg in Germany. In her remarks, Heine said pedophilia is an unchangeable sexual orientation, just like heterosexuality. She calls it equal to heterosexuality. No one chooses to be a pedophile. No one can cease being one, Heine argued during her talk. The difference between pedophilia and other sexual orientations is that living out this sexual orientation will end in disaster. The term minor attracted person grabbed headlines after Professor Alian Walker used it during a discussion on pedophiles in November 2021. Walker, a woman who transitioned to live as a man, in other words, a man with a physical deformity, self-inflicted. Yeah, a woman who lived as a man. Anyway, transformer, mental problems. And if that bothers you, tough. It's true, by definition. Was discussing her book, A Long Dark Shadow, Minor Attracted People in Their Pursuit of Dignity. In other words, for pedophiles. In the interview with the Prostasia Foundation, a San Francisco organization focused on child sexual abuse, Walker said it's less stigmatizing to use the term minor attracted person than pedophilia when referring to people who don't act on their urges to have sex with children. In other words, if I call you by a better name, it's just more dignifying for you. You're the pervert. but I have to worry about you, not your victims. Well, she's talking about people who don't act on it. Uh-huh. Okay. So the sociopath who doesn't go out and kill 20 people and eat them just because he's thinking about it all day long, he's okay. No. No. After stepping down, Walker said in her prepared statement that she was fired from Old Dominion University in Virginia. She says she stepped down. She was fired. If you'll remember this, I still have these stories. This wasn't too long ago. This happened during all that craziness in 2022 to 2020, 2021. Walker said in a prepared statement that her research was mischaracterized by some in the media. Walker blamed the public outcry on intolerance for her transgender identity and said that research aimed to prevent sexual abuse. In other words, the only reason that you're not accepting her cry to accept pedophilia as normal is because she's a transgender. You're a bigot, transgenderophobe. And here comes all the stuff they've done with race to defend this as well. Patterns, 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 people. Later, Johns Hopkins University hired Walker to work on the Moore Center for Preventing Child Sexual Abuse in Baltimore. So you want a child molester to work in preventing child sexual abuse? Yeah. I want the world's greatest bank robber to help me teach people how not to rob the bank. All they're going to do is figure out how not to get caught from inside the system now. And she was hired by Johns Hopkins. Now, I left the pictures in this story on purpose. You'll have to look at the story to see it. But two former colleagues at Old Dominion defended Walker in a journal of the American Society of Criminology. Our friend and colleague, Dr. Alian Walker, was the victim of trolling attack on their research and their person that resulted in the loss of their position at Old Dominion University. If Joe exposes this crap, he deserves to be canceled. But if we cancel her for being a pervert, oh, she's a victim of Joe. The Marine in me is, I'm struggling to keep him in check because my inner Arlie Ermy wants to bark some bad words that'll get my wife down on top of me right now. To the people who said that, come see me in person. You can come all at one time. It won't matter. Anyhow, the attacks they wrote were centering around misinformation and links to Dr. Walker's identity as non-binary, transgendered, and Jewish. Misinformation. They read her article on the air. So the truth is now misinformation. Now you understand the mystification of America, the very first article in this series. These stories are all related, folks. They all flow together. It says growing cultural acceptance. The fashion house Balenciaga faced backlash recently after running an ad campaign depicting little girls holding a teddy bear wearing bondage gear. One ad shows pages from a child pornography court ruling. Balenciaga later apologized for the advertisement. You knew that was wrong. Why'd you apologize? Because you're pedophiles, that's why. A November headline from Washington Post Theater Review read, Downstate is a play about pedophiles. It's also brilliant. The off-Broadway play characterizes pedophiles as complicated and troubled victims of harsh punishment. I'm not going to keep reading this. It's just going to piss me off. But Scott Walker, he's against this. He's trying to warn people what's going to happen. He says a minister who teaches church history and historiological theology at Westminster Seminary in California. He called the destigmatization of pedophilia the last stage of neo-pagan sexual revolution. He feels researchers in academia are setting the final stage in society in which there are no police, no prisons, no stigma for being sexually attracted to children. Hold on to that because he's on to something there. No police, no prisons, no standards of how you're supposed to live, no right and wrong. Everybody doing whatever they want to do. As in the days of Noah. It all goes back to a lack of connection to nature. He said, once nature is gone, we no longer have boundaries. All things are possible. When have I told you that before? If I can get you to believe in absurdity, I get you to do atrocities. All things become possible from a contradiction. Remember? Homosexuality has been considered a mental disorder until the American Psychiatric Association voted in 1973 to take it off the list. This is where one of our listeners can come in. She'll tell you exactly where and how they started this. They did it in the prisons. They went from there. Clark said that decision was political, not scientific. He is correct. Pedophilia remains on the list of mental disorders, but Clark thinks it's only a matter of time before the designation is removed. This is all just part of a long march toward normalizing everything. Everything except something connected to the Judeo-Christian ethic. And there's a warning in here. It says people must fight the issue of normalizing pedophilia at every juncture. It says suddenly it will become legal. Blueprint to normalize homosexuality and to attack those who object is being followed word for word, step for step by the pedophiles. And now you know why you're never going to get Epstein's client list. And now you know Pizzagate never happened. How do you know? Media said so. What did the cops say? There was never a case file opened. What? Well, the cops according to the media, cops investigated and found nothing to that case of Pizzagate. How'd they investigate without a case file? Explain that to me. Explain it. I'll tell you how. Hey, they caught us again. Quick, make this go away. Okay, media, we looked and we found nothing. Media goes, okay, sure, fine, no problem. They looked and they found nothing. Why are they all in agreement? Because they were all clients of Epstein. You getting it yet? You understand? Let's keep going. There's another one here. Gateway Pundit. Democrats lower voting age to 16 in cities. Pelosi once said it's important to capture kids while they are in high school. You can't have alcohol until you're 21. You can't, well, it used to be you couldn't vote until you're 18. But we're going to let you make decisions about your sexuality in kindergarten that are going to affect you for the rest of your life, maybe even, probably even sterilize you. And we're going to let you vote by the time you're 16. Arlie Ermy and me is screaming to get out. If you are part, I'm not even going to go there anymore. Dems are trying to lower the voting age to 16. Is gaining steam across the country. The cities of Oakland, Berkeley, Tacoma Park, Hyattsville, Greenbelt, Riverdale Park, and Mount Rainier all allow 16 and 17-year-olds to vote in municipal elections. Boston is now trying to do it as well. The city councils just approved a petition allowing 16 and 17-year-olds to vote in municipal elections. It is unknown if it will pass the Massachusetts legislature. The Democrat-led movement to lower the legal voting age to 16, or in some cases even younger, is gaining momentum nationwide, scoring local victories while winning the support of lawmakers and activists on the political left. The campaign's latest win came in Boston, where the city council on Wednesday approved the petition allowing 16, 17-year-olds residents to vote in municipal elections. The petition will now be sent to the Massachusetts legislature for approval, which isn't guaranteed. Several other towns and cities in Massachusetts have voted for similar proposals, which then failed to pass the state house. In 2019, Pelosi said she supported the voting as age being lowered. When asked by a reporter, she said, "I myself have always been for lowering the voting age." House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Democrat, on Thursday said she has always been for lowering the voting age to 16. Pelosi was asked by a reporter at her weekly press conference whether she believed the issue of lowering the national voting age to 16 years old would gain traction in Congress. And the issue came up for debate in House last week on an amendment to the For the People Act, which is also called H.R. 1. I myself personally, not speaking for caucus, I myself have always been for lowering the voting age to 16, Pelosi said. I think it is really important to capture kids while they're in high school, when they're invested in all this, when they're learning about government. And if I capture the kids until they're 8, they're mine forever. Thank you, Lenin and Stalin. And this is why Democrats never, ever, 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 ever leave the Democratic Party, the cult, unless God reaches in and snatches them out himself. Once a cultist, always a cultist. Let's make you a Democrat while you're still in school. And while we're at it, we're going to hook you on pornography and teach you that it's okay to do whatever the heck you want to do, so that while you're hooked on it, you're going to become so hooked on the dopamine that your ability to think clearly is going to be destroyed. And then you're going to become a pervert. So then we'll have to normalize all your perversions that are generated by the addiction that we got you hooked on. Yes, Cyberscan. Hitler went for the children as well. They go for the children because the children do not have enough life experience to know better. They prey on the weak, the young, the helpless. They call themselves the righteous among us. Isaiah 5, 20, 21. If you don't know it, look it up. Blaze Media. Teens murdered dad execution style because he took away their laptops, according to police. Court Neville, November 30, 2022. Four South Carolina teenagers are in custody facing serious charges after they lured a man out of the apartment and then shot him to death. On November 14, four teens, three of whom are 14 and one is 15, allegedly arrived at the apartment in Rock Hill, South Carolina, approximately an hour north of Columbia, where 38-year-old Larry Ingram Jr. lived. According to reports, the teens then enticed Ingram to exit his apartment by kicking and throwing objects at his door. Once Ingram walked outside of his apartment, police say the teens shot him in the back. Once he was on the ground, he was shot again. WSOC TV reported that one of the teens shot Ingram several times. It is unclear whether Ingram died immediately or later succumbed to his injuries. Rock Hill Police Detective Eric Olson called the shooting an execution. Police say the two of the four teens are related to Ingram and were motivated to murder him because he took away their laptop computers after they abused their Instagram privileges. They also reportedly represented other disciplinary measures he has imposed on them in the past. News reports have referred to Ingram as a father, and a woman claiming to be the victim's sister asserted that two of the teens are indeed Ingram's sons. His sons, his sons just wasn't, they weren't ready to accept discipline, Kimberly Ingram told WSOC TV through tears. And it's very hard on our family because not only did I lose my brother, we dealing with my nephews as well. So the parents are trying to actually teach these children right and wrong, and they just shoot him. Yeah, I'm sure that that's just an isolated case. Let's go to the next story. Daily Mail, boy, 10, shot his mom dead at close range for refusing to get him a $500 virtual VR headset, then used her Amazon account to buy one anyway after she's dead. Milwaukee cops charge him as an adult. The boy shot his 44-year-old mother, Quiana Mann, dead at the home. The 10-year-old, who is said to have rage issues, has been charged with first-degree reckless homicide and will be tried as an adult. He is accused of shooting his mother in the face at close range because she refused to buy him a VR headset. The next day, he used his mother's Amazon account to buy an Oculus virtual reality headset, which can cost up to $500. The boy is expected to appear in court December 8th and could face up to 60 years in prison if convicted as an adult. That's the gist of the story. I want you to do me a favor. Well, Joe, they were underprivileged. Uh-huh. Go look that story up. Mom is very upper middle class, very attractive lady, or was. They live in a nice house, good cars. There are pictures in that story. Good family. Spoiled, rotten child. Narcissist, sociopath. We're making lots of them today. John Ford, you want to know why I'm covering these stories? If you haven't figured it out yet, you never will. Which makes me wonder why you still listen to the show, Mr. Ford. Because we can't teach you anything. National Police Association. Water Joe, you want to talk about righteous rage? Hold on. Judge rules Michigan cop who was in a fight for his life should be tried for murder. Stephen Pumper. This is from National Police Association. I just wrote an NPA article about a police officer from Norfolk, Virginia, Edmund Ryan Hoyt, who was wrongly tried twice for voluntary manslaughter. First was a mistrial, and then finally, rightly acquitted. This is not the case that's the subject of this article. Just listen. Because there was never any evidence the officer committed a crime. One more time. Just because you don't like the outcome doesn't mean the officer did anything wrong. In that case, a suspect allegedly first threatened the officer's wife and little girls with a knife while they were walking on a sidewalk. When confronted by the officer, the suspect also threatened him with a knife. So the officer shot him. Done deal, right? Not so much these days. Of course, it's happening again. Why is it that the law enforcement agencies in too many places are having a hard time hiring and retaining cops? It's a complete mystery, right? Back in April, I wrote about Grand Rapids, Michigan police officer Christopher Schur, who, if you ask cop haters, shot a suspect in the back of the head, killing him for no reason. But there was a reason, a good reason. If he hadn't, the suspect may likely have killed him. Nothing is as simple as the anti cop factions would have you believe. Regardless, because the racial calculus was correct, white cop, black suspect, protesters hit the streets as if the cop had shot some saint who just been out healing the masses. Oh, if this isn't a familiar pattern. Judge Nicholas Oyub, who, after preliminary exam hearing according to the USA Today, ruled it would be up to a jury to decide if Schur will be convicted of second-degree murder. Yes, second-degree murder. Here's the nutshell version of the incident from both USA Today and Judge Oyub with some brief analysis. USA Today wasted no ink in summarizing the incident. Patrick Loyoya escapes violence in Congo, then police kill him. Well, a few things happened along the way. According to The Hill, Judge Ayob ruled, applying the probable cause standard, there is at least some evidence for which you know what? Stop. You can read this. I'm going to go over this for you. The Marine in me can't do this because I've been in this situation, literally. Myself, I've been here. This officer was trying to arrest a suspect who resisted arrest, fled. The officer pinned him to the ground and was telling him to quit resisting. The suspect the officer then tried to get his taser so that he could subdue the suspect. The suspect grabbed his taser before it was fired and refused to let go. There's a bystander in a house nearby, looks out the window, out the door, steps out the door, watches what's going on, turns around, walks back in the house. Doesn't help. So now the officer has something else he's got to worry about. If you're not going to help the cop, then you're a potential enemy for the officer. So now his attention's divided. He's got a suspect with a hand on his taser that will not let go. His training tells him at this point, shoot the suspect. So that's what he does. Perfectly in keeping with the training that the officer's department had given him. Well, why? Because there's another story almost identical to this, and it's in this article. You can go read it. The cop who's writing this article for the Police Review, he gives you the story, gives you all the details. That officer had his taser taken, and he was shot with it and nearly killed. This is why the officers shot this guy. It's not because had nothing to do with race. Had to do with the fact that this man would not quit resisting arrest, grabbed a weapon that's potentially lethal, refused to let go of it, refused the police's orders. The officer is now worried about the guy in the house next to him because he doesn't seem to give a rip. His life is legitimately in danger. So he follows protocol and he shoots the suspect. Now, he's on trial for second-degree murder. Do you remember the article just a few minutes before where it said it's almost as if there are people in this country who don't want any sense of law and order in our country? They want feels good, do it by everybody, except you. If you oppose them, they'll put you in jail. If you're the devil, well, yeah, you're going to put anybody who wants to speak up for God or Jesus in jail. Heck yeah. Isaiah 5:20-21. Go look it up. We live in those days. This is why your officers don't do anything anymore. Or don't want to do anything. The second story, New York Post, police slammed for erosion of public confidence with mixed messages in Idaho student murders. This is from December 1st. The story's by Ben Kesslin. It's about 4 students that were murdered in Idaho, Moscow, Idaho. I'm not going to read this one either, but it's in there for you. You can read it. Now, if you go through the entire story, instead of the PDF version that I gave you, and you read the whole story, well, then you'll understand why the police are very hesitant to say anything in this case. The police are saying that there's reason to suspect these 4 students were targeted. Well, there's a video of one of the murdered students in an elevator. It's very telling because it happens right about the time she's murdered. Just go read the story. The police are responding to many problems here. The public demands they need to know. Well, why should the police open their mouth? All they're going to do is get themselves yelled at as being racists, bigots, homophobes, and all sorts of other crap. They're being accused of incompetence because they won't tell you what's going on in an ongoing investigation. And if they did, they'd be accused of being racists and all sorts of other things. They're in a no-win situation. And we're going to armchair quarterback it and wonder. I was a young Marine. I was on the border, Southern California. Drug interdiction, something we're not supposed to do, violation of Posse Comitatus Act. We're armed. We have ammunition. And we take fire from cartel people on the other side of the border, from Mexico. Technically, this is an act of war. Now, at this point, I am legally allowed to return fire, but we were told we couldn't. We had to just sit there and be shot at. Our whole purpose was there to keep them from coming across the border at that point in time, not to defend ourselves. Politicians waste the lives of our police officers and our military all the time for their own personal gain. If you think they won't waste your life for their own personal gain, you're fooling yourself. Okay, so John says, I can't teach by not answering questions. First of all, John, today is about reading headlines and putting a little commentary on it and making it connect. It's not a teaching day. Those are Tuesdays. So you say you'll ask a question. Why am I covering all this? To show people that are watching the show, that are interested, that care, why people like you, John, are pushing pedophilia as a normalized thing. Why people like you, John, push feels good, do it, let the bad guys go, put anybody who has anything to say about it, tries to stop it, in jail, cancel them, sit there and heckle their show to get in their way and disrupt what they're trying to expose. I'm educating the audience that cares, John, about you. There's your answer. Daily Mail. Oh, if you're not outraged yet. Daily Mail, Gavin Newsom Reparations Committee will recommend handing out $223,200 per person to all descendants of slaves in California for housing discrimination at a cost of $559 billion in the nation's biggest restitution effort ever. I am not going to be able to read this one either. I can't handle it anymore. I'll lose the control over my language. It's there for you, including a picture of the governor's paper that he signed for this. This is racism, is what this is in this article. This is state-sponsored racism for the purpose of buying votes, using taxpayer money. Let me explain something to you. I'm not saying that I am not aware of the injustices of the past. I am. Now, if you're going to get into me with all this racist crap, I'm going to throw it back at you because my ancestors are Polish. They've been slaves for a lot longer than blacks have. They've been slaves their entire existence. So I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. There were just as many white slaves back then as there were black. You don't know about that because that doesn't fit the political narrative. What you're doing now is using that false narrative to just hand out government money in total violation of your state constitution there, California. Read your state constitution. You cannot try the son for the crime of the father. And if that's not enough, the United States Constitution says no state can do that. And yet that's what reparations are. You're trying to punish the present to make amends for something in the past. Fine, I buy the game. I want every black person in this country to pay every white person in this country $1 billion because it was blacks who sold you into slavery to the white man, and now you're punishing us for that. So it started over in Africa with blacks. Get over the race. There's been slavery in every society throughout all of human history. It's not related to race. It's related to the drive for control. You're buying lies, folks, and you're allowing them to be pushed. Don't expect society to survive. Because the articles we're going over today tell you it isn't going to. It's already in decay. For example, after the story I just quit reading, there's another one about a piece of property that was supposedly wrongfully taken by the government of California from a black family that's recently been given back to that black family, who can now lease it back to the government for $413,000 a year, or the government might buy it back for $21 million, using money from people that had nothing, black, white, Mexican, it doesn't matter what color their skin is. They had nothing to do with this back then. 100-something years ago this happened. So I've got to pay taxes to make reprimands for something that the government legally did, legal at the time. So what you're saying now is, I'm morally outraged. Remember when I told you that legal doesn't necessarily mean moral, but the law's been written to make it legal? Well, who's paying that poor woman who had her property stolen by Donald Trump reparations for her property? Because it is an apples to apples case, but because that family's black, they're going to get it back in spades. Because that woman was white, nobody gives a flip. Don't talk to me about racism when the racism in this country is black against white. Racism has to be supported by force of law. Otherwise, it's bigotry. Racism has to be institutionalized. The only place you find institutional racism in this country now is from the government, and it's against whites. And whites are pushing it because they want the black vote. This is all about control. And all of us, no matter what color our skin is, white, black, yellow, red, brown, we're all going right along with it. Marching behind the piper, and he keeps playing his tune right to the cliff. And somehow or another, we think we're going to vote our way out of this. Nuts. So yeah, you can go back to that. You can look it up. You'll find that other story. The final story. The final story is just as good, at least in my book. It's about goblins. Yeah, the most looked up word of the year in let me just read it from Not to Be. Oxford Dictionary says goblin mode is the word of the year because we need a new word for off the charts narcissism. Harris Rigby, December 5th, 2022. I guess I'm officially an old now because for perhaps the first time in my life, I have absolutely no idea what the Oxford Dictionary word of the year actually means. Goblin mode, 2 words, is the word of the year. It was voted on by the internet users across the globe. After reading the Oxford definition, it kind of is a perfect phrase to sum up the current generation. They are unapologetically goblins. Goblin mode, a slang term often used in the expression of in goblin mode or to go goblin mode, is a type of behavior which is unapologetically self-indulgent, lazy, slovenly, or greedy, typical in a way that rejects social norms or expectations. It's basically our society and the younger generation fully embracing their hedonism by giving it a cute but honest nickname like goblin. In other words, making you seem more acceptable by giving you a nicer name. Craziness. He calls it, how does he put it here? Hold on a second, bring it back up. I can't see it. George Costanza with no restraints. That's what he calls it. Yeah, here we go. James William Holt. Maybe my family can sue the government for busting up the moonshine stills in Appalachia during Prohibition. We could have by the next Jim Beam family if they would have left us alone. Yes, James, according to the logic that's being used in California right now, yes, you should be able to do that. And you might be able to say, hey, you could be just make the claim that you'd be richer than Jim Beam and go ahead and sue. It doesn't matter that it was illegal to have moonshine back then. That doesn't matter because it was what they did in California was legal. And there's reparations for legal activity. So that's another case of the law was used unjustly. You should sue. Now, I don't expect you to get very far there because, well, to quote another movie, instead of going, but you're black, but James, but you're white, so you won't get reparations. This isn't about reparations, folks. It's not. It's about control. It's about nihilism. It's about breaking down any and all law and order in society. It's about destroying our society. That's what this is all about, all of it. It is about destroying society so they can remake it in their own image. Fabians, what is that? Oh, yeah. Heat up the world, in other words, cause nihilism, so that I can shape it closer to my heart's desire. Why are Fabians important? Because those are European progressives. Why is that important? Because if you study them, they'll tell you what they're going to do. George Orwell, do you remember that show? And what the heck is his name? Wells, H.G. Wells, and Huxley. They all told us, all of them told us, none of us want to listen. So, Joe, knowing about it, what's it going to do for us? Well, first things first, you start changing things in your world. You can't control what's going on in California or D.C. You can control what's going on immediately around you, what you put up with, what you tolerate. You can control when and where you give pushback. You'd better start. Because if you don't, goblin mode will just eat you too. It's right there, folks. That book. Jonathan Cahn, Return of the Gods. Read it. Baal worship. Money. Money, 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 money. Symbolized by a bull. What's the symbol of Wall Street? Giant bull, right? What story does that take you back to? Behold, Israel, your God, Yahweh, the bull who brought you out of Egypt. Got Israel destroyed for that. If you know the prophecies of Ephraim, you know that this nation is the seed of Ephraim now. There are prophecies about Israel, the house of Israel, being given a new land of milk and honey where it will regain their strength. And we will repeat the same mistakes of the past. That's what Jonathan Cahn's book, The Harbinger, is all about. That's what 9/11 was all about. We were toppled by the exact same people that toppled the Northern Kingdom thousands of years ago. We did the exact same things. In some cases, word for word, act for act. If you understand Scripture, that's exactly what I should have expected from the house of Ephraim. Same pattern. And we did it. And there's the bull, because we love to work. Ephraim is a trained heifer. He loves to thresh. He loves to work. And then Moloch worship. Then you're going to fall into Moloch worship. And you're going to sacrifice your children. Put them through the fire. That's abortion. So, well, that's not nothing to do with the fire, Joe. Did you see all the stories about how many of those aborted babies' bodies were burned up in incinerators? Used to fuel the incinerator. Yeah, we put our children through the fire. There's also a prophecy about Ephraim saying many of his children will be given up, either to foreign wars or to a dry womb. In other words, die in childbirth, abortion, etc., they'll never be. We've matched that one too. So we have Baal worship and Moloch worship. All we're missing is the Asterith pole, the goddess of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Her name is Easter, or Ishtar. And she took back hold of this country in full force. but it's really came about with a little event in New York City, Stonewall, dealing with the LGBT community, the gay pride movement, and all of that. That's where your gay pride parades come from. Stonewall. They're commemorations of that event, which happened on particularly important days for Ishtar, Easter. Yeah, the same Easter that you celebrate if you're a Catholic or a Christian. That's what it's named after. It's named after her. She's the goddess of fertility. And her lover, Talmud, yeah, every year we recreate when she killed him because she got pissed off. And then there's 40 days of mourning. Catholics call it Lent. None of this is connected, Joe. That's because you don't know your history. Study your history. It's all very much connected. And it's as alive today as it was 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,000 years ago. And it's doing the exact same things. Jonathan Cahn tries to tell you, can't read that book. It's a simple, easy read. It doesn't take long. It's very informative. Guess what else it is? Something that liberals can't do. They don't understand how to do this. It's fully documented. Tells you where all of his information comes from, how to find it, where to find it. You can look up behind him. He's not full of it. He's telling you. So I tell you that they're pushing gay pride. Blue book right there. That's the plan. They boast about it. So now the pedophiles are going to use the same thing to do the same thing. Well, both of those, homosexuality and pedophilia, they go right back to Ishtar. Now you know why I can't explain the world to you without using the biblical worldview, because that makes the biblical worldview is Occam's razor properly applied. When I've got everything else in history, apples to apples, oranges to oranges, all lined up, what's the simplest explanation? The simplest explanation is the Bible. The explanation that you have in the scriptures. The most complicated one is a infinite series of coincidences that all seem to push in the same direction. Do you understand vector analysis at all? That's impossible. Y'all understand the concept of impossibility? It means throw it out the window or you're irrational. Yes. Tony Bennett said if one would study, would ask less questions. Racism is another government pushed agenda along with tyrannyisms. I agree with Mr. Bennett. Now, Mr. Ford's trying to mock me saying I don't believe in racism. I do believe in racism. I happen to redefine the words slightly different. Bigotry, individual prejudice on the individual level. That's everywhere. We're going to have that forever. That's human nature. Racism. What we think of as racism today is almost always bigotry, not true racism. Racism has to be institutionalized, meaning it has to be something that has some sort of force behind it. Usually government. If we have racism in this country, which is the literally legally protected skin color? Blacks? Brown blacks, brown Hispanics, whites. You know which race you can legally discriminate against without any recourse? The yellow man, the Asian. You can do whatever you want to him. Nobody gives a crap. Go to California and look what happens. They're told, hey, I got the highest scores for college. We should all be able to get in. On the merit, Asians are best. Of all the races in this country, academically, the Asians beat us all, even whitey. But they're punished. They have the lowest numbers for entrance into the Ivy League schools. Why? Because it's not about your merit. It's not about anything you've earned. It's not about a rule of law. It's not about treating people equally. It's about power. If we let too many Asians into our schools, eventually they'll take over. And they don't believe in our progressive agenda garbage. And they will be like Trump. They will show you that hard work and dedication yields positive results almost every time. And there's proof in the real world that contradicts our lies. So we can't have that. But then what we'll do is we'll have a higher percentage of blacks allowed into these schools, even though they're not academically equipped to do well in this school. So they're going to look bad. And then we'll say, see, that's proof that the black man is not as good as the white. And that's your progressive whites. They have been, and they have always will be racists. That's part of their nature. If you're a white progressive, Republican or Democrat, you're a racist. Your whole ideology is built on it, all the way back to Teddy Roosevelt and Woodrow Wilson and before, all the way back to Marx. Secular humanism is built on racism. The eugenics movement is built on racism. Eugenics and progressives are intricately tied. They are the same ideology, same people. Now, I had the benefit of growing up, my youth, my youngest adult age, in a society that did not know skin color. We were all green. Yeah, there was individual bigotry there. Yes. But I was in the Marine Corps in a time when there was no institutional racism. There were just as many black officers as whites, just as many black NCOs as whites. In fact, hardworking black men tended to do better in the military than us whites because we wanted to get out quicker. We thought we had a better life outside of the service. So they tended to run the military more than the whites did. And they ran it fair and equally. They didn't look to color. And the service did well back then. I'm tired of this. It's like Mr. Bennett says, it's an artificial argument. It's used to break us up, divide us, to tell blacks you can't do any better. You're held down. Tell that to Oprah Winfrey, one of the richest people in the world. Who held her down? What was that show that Will Smith starred in about the Wall Street investor? Made himself into a multi-millionaire, billionaire, or whatever. He was at one point homeless with his son. I can't remember the name of the movie or the man, but he did good. Apparently he couldn't have been. That's just an anomaly. It couldn't have happened, because a black man can't make his way up like that by his bootstrap, and yet he does. And what do we call him? Oh, he's got to be an Uncle Tom because he adopted the system. I'm so sick and tired of this. I'm tired of people telling us what we can and cannot do. It irks me to no end. Bingo. Racism is institutionalized by law. Read the book, White by Law, John Ford. It is pretty clear that the shift is coming. 750,000 dead in the Civil War that I happen to believe was fought by, in large, because of slavery and to an end institution. That's what I call reparations. Yes. Slavery was ended at the cost of blood of mostly, not entirely, mostly white men. Thank you, T-Rex. And the North was losing that war until they switched their reason for fighting it. When they started, it was just because they wanted the southern states to continue being their agricultural slaves. They started for a very progressive reason. Once the Republican Party was born and went after it for a moral reason, scriptural reason, well, then the whole war changed. Things got different. And then that was specifically done to end slavery. That's why the GOP was formed. By the way, that's why the NRA was formed too, so that blacks could protect themselves from the Democrats. Say, well, Joe, the parties flipped in the 60s. No, they did not. That's another lie. Go look that up in PragerU. A very good video by a black professor. She'll explain it to you. She'll give you all the receipts, and she'll tell you who started the lie and why. And most of us have bought that. Not true. Now we're in a society where we're going to normalize pedophilia because we don't want to hurt their feelings. What about the feelings of the children who will be victimized by them? Go read the articles. that I was reading to you. I had to quit. I couldn't handle it. I read them last night and it was bad enough. One of those articles even admits that, well, pedophiles become pedophiles because of harm that's done to them when they were kids. So they start preying on children that are the same age as when they were hurt. Well, I thought pedophiles were born that way. And the exact same article rather, that says you're born a pedophile, they admit that you're made a pedophile. Well, if you're made, why can't you be unmade? Well, apparently you can't be, because you're born that way, even though you're made that way, even though you're born that way. Do you see the contradiction? It's a fallacious argument. The whole thing is, I'm a pervert, and I want you to treat me as though I'm a protected class. Not just normal. I'm special. You need to protect me. I'm better than you are. I deserve society's protection from all the haters. So maybe I was born a murderer of progressives. I just want to assert that I'm allowed to kill progressives all I want. You can't do nothing to me. I need to be made legally protected because I was born that way. And I got to be able, you need to allow me to do that. And if you don't, you're a progressive murder hater. It's the same thing. It is apples to apples. Don't tell me it isn't, because it is. I know the logic here. I know it very well. I think I've proven that by now, haven't I? Exactly, Wade. Class. Wade says, when I was in the Army, I didn't look at skin color. I only looked at how well they did their job. Exactly. And you would have offered yourself up to protect your black, tan, yellow brothers, red brothers next to you in that foxhole just as quickly as they would have done for you. It's weird. I think I've told you once before. I was in a unit, had a black guy and a white guy. They were both bigots, raging bigots. They hated the other colors. They were best friends. Go figure. The white bigot and the black bigot were the best of friends. Nah, man. It's just about hate and control. That's all it is. Make you hate the tribe. But one-on-one, person-on-person, things change. It's just meant to make you take sides, like the game they play with the D and R. I have no idea what I'm going to give you guys tomorrow. No idea. I'll have a class for you. Don't worry. It'll be a thought-out lesson plan. Wednesday, we're going to revisit last Wednesday's Worship Wednesday, the one that we had a hard time with because the show wasn't acting properly. We're going to revisit. We're going to add on to it. Tough Worship Wednesday for a lot of believers. But I'm going to take you right to the scriptures. We're not going to worry about what people say. We're going to worry about what Scripture says. Thursday, I don't know if we'll do throwback or if we'll do conspiracies. Friday, we got more founding fathers. I've been asked to do a class on the Convention of the States. I think I'm going to tackle that soon, maybe tomorrow, and do a little throwback to our secession show as well when I do that. This is another case of good question. Came in the email. Good suggestion. Thank you. And that might be what we do tomorrow. We'll see. Most of the time, I'm just spirit-led. I don't know what we're going to do until I sit down and I ask the Father, what do we do? So if you've been appreciating the show, you're testing the Bible on the Bible's own merits every day you're here. Because I'm just doing what he tells me to do every day. And to the extent that I get off the rails, it's me, not him. Like I tell all y'all, I appreciate you. I love each and every one of you, even you, John. Maybe we'll get through to you one day. Dodo Cop, you too. Thanks for being here. Appreciate your time. I know it's valuable. I hope I served you in return. We'll see you tomorrow. Y'all stay safe. Take care.